And it being 7:30 now, we call to order this Cabinet meeting of Harlow Council. Can I start by welcoming members of the press and public who are in the audience and remind people to please keep their mobile phones on silent. Can I take item 1 please, apologies for absence?
There's apologies from Councillor Russell Harrow.
Thank you very much. Any others? Item 2, declarations of interest. Are there any? I'll take that as none. Item 3, minutes. Can we approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 12th of July 2021, please? Thank you. Item 4, are there any matters arising from that meeting? No. In which case we'll move to item 5, written questions from the public. There are 3 questions. Is Mr. Nicholas Taylor in the room? Mr. Taylor, would you pass the microphone? Can I invite you to read your question? If you don't have to under the standing orders of the council, we can take it as read if you would prefer.
Certainly the first question can be taken as read.
Okay. Do you have a supplementary question to the first question?
Not to that one.
Okay. Question 2, would you like to read that or would you like to take that as read?
I'll take that as being read as well.
Okay. And do you have a supplementary question?
I do.
Could you answer, please?
So, in response...
Mr. Taylor, for the benefit of everyone in the room, could you turn your microphone on, please? Thank you.
So, in response to your second response to my question, it says that if the motion is passed next week, the council would formally object to the Epping Forest District Council local plan. Now, the planning inspector of the Epping plan has indicated that she will not accept observations other than the minor alterations that have been made recently. And put quite simply, the council is not able to formally object to the local plan of Epping Forest District Council. If you send a letter, as she's indicated, it will not be looked at. So my question to you is, bearing in mind your press statement today, will Harlow Council formally end the agreements with Epping Forest District Council to work together on part of their local development plan, which forms part of the creation of the Harlow and Gilston Garden Town?
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. I think first of all, let me say that I'm aware of the comments that the inspector has made that you said. I still think that my administration has a duty to object formally at this point as we campaign on, and I believe that the inspector should take note of any comments that this council makes. Secondly, no, I'm not willing to end the working with Harlow, Gilston, Garden Town involving Epping Forest, East Herts District Council, Essex County Council and Hertfordshire County Council. That is because I think we all know that for a start in the east of the town, with Junction 7A and hopefully the new hospital campus, we will have to deal with Epping Forest. And I still believe that Epping Forest are an integral part of HGGT as we push growth, I hope, to the north. I also think that by engaging with our neighbours, rather than just acting in an isolationist nature, we have a better chance of securing items that Harlow most needs, both the regeneration and I would hope nomination rights to council houses built and houses built in these areas outside of Harlow. The other reason for not disengaging with Epping Forest is, as you say, there is a chance, and I hope it's not, but there is a chance that the inspector may ignore our objections and may grant the Epping Forest sites, in which case I want to have Harlow Council have maximum impact that it can in working with our neighbours in trying to secure as much benefit from any potential growth around the town for our residents as possible. I don't think disengagement, even if you do disagree with someone, is the answer. Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Mr. Leverett, are you in the room? Mr. Leverett, you have a question to Councillor Swords. Would you like to read it, or would you like to take it as read?
I'd like to read it, please, and good evening to you and good evening to members.
Please do so.
Thank you, Chair. My question is to Councillor Dan Sword, Portfolio Held for Regeneration. The cycle network in Harlow has been well used during the pandemic, and it would hope that will continue to be used when things return to some normality. I'm aware that the area's cycle tracks and footpaths in the ownership of Essex County Council have a maintenance programme in progress, whereas the areas under the ownership of Harlow Council are being left in an appalling state of repair. Can Councillor Sword inform me of how much the council will have in the year's budget to maintain the footpaths and cycle tracks, and when do they expect the maintenance works to be carried out?
Councillor Swords.
I'm delighted that Mr Leverett has raised what is one of the most exciting areas of my portfolio, namely our plan to rebuild Harlow cycle track network to a truly world-beating standard, as I've said many times. And as Mr Leverett knows, because I nearly rode into him on a cycle path a few weeks ago, my passion for this area knows no bounds. I agree that as with so many areas of the regeneration portfolio, the cycle track network of Harlow has faced decades of decline, with no one taking responsibility to right that wrong. But that failure ends, and it ends now. I have an extremely ambitious plan to completely rebuild the entirety of Harlow's cycle track network, and I'm afraid Mr Leverett will have to wait just a short while longer for me to unveil that plan and the funding package to deliver it. Specifically in response to his point about the adoption schedule, at present Harlow Council owns approximately 10% of the town's cycle track network, with the remainder being adopted by Essex County Council. However, I don't agree with his assessment that Essex County Council has done a fantastic job on their areas and Harlow Council has not. The whole network needs a complete rebuilding, and that is what we will deliver.
Thank you, Councillor Swords. Mr Leverett, do you have a supplementary question?
I do, thank you. I'd just like to say to Councillor Lansell, thank you very much for your reply, and I'm pleased you have ambition to improve and extend the cycle tracks. Can I ask if you will look to raise funds and how you propose to achieve this for extending the network to link up with the new housing estates and the new hospital if built?
Councillor Swords.
I don't know whether it's a popular expression, but you have a concrete. Well, I will give you a concrete, although they will not be built with concrete, but I'll give you a concrete guarantee that we will certainly do those things, yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr Leverett.
Thank you.
Thank you for members of the public for coming and asking questions this evening. Item 6, written questions from councillors. Are there any? There are none. And item 7, petitions to the Cabinet. Are there any? There are none. Item 8, the forward work plan. Are there any questions on that? Councillor Charles wants to say something, so I'll let him say something.
Thank you, Chair. Just on the work plan, page 23, just to confirm that the partnership grant review has been moved to November. The reason being that we want more time to consult with those groups who already are in receipt of the partnership grant through the council. So that consultation we believe is important, and we'll be factoring that into the plans. On page 24, you will see the health and wellbeing strategy has been moved to November. The reason for that move is that we are, like other district councils and Essex County Council, awaiting the Joint Strategic Needs Assessment. That data is currently fairly out of date. It was made available in 2019. Doesn't take into consideration the impact of COVID. So, as an added precaution to make sure that we have an evidence-led health and wellbeing policy, we're waiting for that data. So in November, effectively, the health and wellbeing strategy will be a positioning statement that will then be informed by the data. And I thought it would be helpful to inform the Cabinet of those updates.
Thank you very much, Councillor Charles. Can you turn your microphone, please? Thank you. Right, questions around the room. I saw Councillor Vince's hand go up, so I'll go to you first.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I know that the fire safety work, which obviously we welcome, comes up later in, so I won't go on too much about that. But it was just really with regards to the forward plan. Obviously, there's lots of mentions of fire safety work throughout the forward plan, which of course we welcome. Just wondered whether Simon or Andrew could just explain just kind of why that order and kind of how the blocks have been prioritised in terms of the work that would be really useful.
Councillor Carlton?
I would defer to Mr. Murray.
I think the priorities are identified in the work plan based on risk assessments and fire risk assessments. And it's split about 2 to 3 years. We review it annually, and then we allocate resources. I think the last administration allocated resources which we're delivering in this financial year.
Thank you.
Anything else, Councillor Vince? Anyone else? Councillor Durkin?
Yes, good evening. Mine is a couple of questions. One is regarding 10.12.712, which appears on page 22, which is the Cabinet Policy. Oh no, sorry, it's 10.12.484, which is a compulsory purchase order. Would it be possible for you to give assurances that this compulsory order is only for one particular or specified site that just happens to be in my ward, or is this actually going to be a general compulsory order that would then cover the whole of the town?
Okay, if I can go to Councillor Mike Hardware, who's the responsible portfolio holder. Mike?
I'm assured that it's a general order, but it will be for named sites.
Councillor Blanders, could I ask you to take your left side, please, or turn your mobile phone off? Please?
Sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't hear the reply.
Neither did I, use the mobile phone.
Sorry.
It is a broad order, but it will be with named sites.
Okay, and is it my understanding that the named site is the one that we are aware of that's actually in my ward at the moment? Which is by the roundabout by the train station.
Do we need to be careful about naming any particular sites in this open forum, and this is best dealt with by Councillor Hardware speaking to Councillor Durkin outside of this meeting or writing to him?
Well, the report's going to be published to the public next month anyway. We can wait.
I can write.
Okay. Is it possible for me to ask my second question regarding the forward plan, Chair?
Indeed.
Okay, mine is in two parts. One is in relation to, again, page 19, 10.12.873, which is the town centre master plan, as well as the 10.12.714 on page 22, which is the adoption of open space supplementary planning document. I'm just mindful that tonight you are going to be having a debate about commencing what is loosely described as consultation around the town centre. I don't understand why you are going forward on a town centre master plan when at the same time you are claiming you're going to be consulting with our community. So my question is, surely these two areas should be delayed until we know the outcome of the consultation.
I'll look to Councillor Swords first as the first portfolio holder on the town centre master plan.
Yeah, it's a very pointed question actually, Tony. The reason it's done in that order, and as I'm sure we'll come on to in more detail about the town plan, it's a serious consultation, it really will be. It's not a leaflet document, a library type consultation, but we'll come on to that later. The reason the town centre master plan is there at that point is because, as Councillor Durkin well knows, the current ownership schedule of the town centre means that private developers are free to put any planning application they so wishing. And at present we have a few grounds to turn them down on, so we're bringing forward a master plan that will tackle that issue in some part as best as we possibly can. And I'm sure as the town plan develops into a full and adopted document, that he will see that the consultation on the town centre specifically and what we will deliver in the town centre, namely a complete rebuilding, will be only made possible because we've brought that master plan forward in the next month or so.
Councillor Swords, can I ask a follow-up question on that? Are you suggesting to the Cabinet that the fact that we didn't have a town centre master plan as a town has left the town centre open to speculative development the town may not welcome?
I think the short answer is yes. I seem to recall that there was an administration in the room for 9 years that didn't bring them forwards.
Thank you.
Chair, is it possible just to come back just to clarify the response that my colleague from the Cabinet gave?
I'll allow a question.
Okay, it links very much to the first one. Are we therefore saying the compulsory purchase order that is on page 19, even though it's going to be site-specific, is also now going to be including compulsory purchase of properties in the town centre that we don't own, which is about 80% of the town centre.
I don't believe that to be the case, but I'll look at Councillor Harlow and Councillor Swords to give you an answer.
No, it won't.
Councillor Swords, do you want to add anything to that?
Yes, that was very, very brief. Mike, I think Tony's after a bit more detail. No, it won't. But further, as we both know, the current ownership schedule in the town centre allows the council to do very little. And as I will come on to, and perhaps that's why, in my view, and clearly the view of the residents of this town, the council has done very little to regenerate the town centre to date. That's going to change because, as I will come on to, for far too long it's been ignored because we say it's too difficult. We don't own this bit, we don't own that bit, so we're powerless. We need to change that. We have to change it because 74 years on it needs changing. And that's exactly what we're going to do. And I'm sure I will have many, many lengthy discussions and debate in the coming months with Councillor Durkin about exactly how we're going to do that. But if I were to say anything that he may take away from my long rambling, it's that we're not going to use that excuse anymore, and we are going to deliver a full town centre regeneration.
I think Councillor Harlow, that sparked you to maybe want to give a further response to Councillor Durkin. I'll allow it briefly.
Not on the CPO because that's completely separate. But the whole idea of the master plan is to give us the ability to create planning policies in the town centre that we don't currently have. One example being height of buildings.
Thank you, Councillor Harlow. Any other questions on the forward work plan, or can I ask that it be noted? Noted. Thank you. Item 9, Joint Finance and Performance Report. I will move this in Councillor Perrin's absence. Can I point out that this is one of those very strange reports as a new administration that covers a three-month period, 1 month of the old administration, 1 month of purdah and elections and no formal administration, and 1 month of the new administration. I know Councillor Perrin's deputy and also attending Cabinet Member James Lepard is able to answer questions on this if there are any, but can I ask the questions first of all? Councillor Vince.
Yeah, I'm going to ask 69, isn't it? Page 55, it talks, obviously it's about the performance of various aspects. The one that did concern me, I just wondered if there could be clarification as to why, was the average wait time of calls received by Contact Harlow. Clearly there's been a problem there. It's gone from being a nice green star to, although I appreciate the red colour, a triangle. I just wondered whether you could explain why that is the case, and whether it's COVID-related or whatever really.
Councillor Vince, could you give the page number within the document or the item, please? I'm using it online, and I've got 22 pages within the document.
Oh, I see. Sorry. It's either 15 or 55, depending how you do it.
Actually, it's 55.
It's 55, yeah.
Yes. I mean, you're quite right, actually, in saying that the increase in complaints is partially due to the lifting of the COVID restrictions. Since the pandemic, more people have been complaining, and you've seen the increase since it started is beginning to flatten again now. It's basically almost at the same levels as it was statistically in historical terms.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Durkin? Oh, sorry, Councillor Vince, I should ask you.
Thank you for that, Councillor. Just to follow up, really, I mean, have we, I'm sure the answer is probably not right now, but we've got kind of a breakdown of what the kind of complaints are, in specific terms, or sort of specific patterns or themes. You mentioned statistics, James, and as you know, that's my thing, so it really interests me. So I just wondered if there was any sort of specific themes or patterns that you know that we noticed.
We have, I will get back to you on that if I may. I'll get the Councillor Perrin to come back to you in writing.
Perfect.
Thank you, Councillor Vince. Councillor Durkin, I saw your hand.
Thank you very much, Chair. Mine is page 43, which is specifically related to the Lee Manning Centre. And in light of the government's announcements of increasing people's taxes to provide health and social care, what assurances can we provide to our community that the Lee Manning Centre is safe and secure as it currently is at the moment?
I think I'll ask Councillor Charles as the Cabinet Portfolio Holder for Community Resilience to answer that question.
Thank you, Chair. It was great to announce only about a month ago just some of the great activities that have been happening as the Lee Manning Centre has moved from a service where the staff are going out to their usual recipients of care to actually start to come back to the centre. There are no plans by this administration to make any announcements around the provision of the Lee Manning Centre. As someone who has a past history in social care policy, I think it is critical that we have community care outreach, and the service that is provided at the Lee Manning Centre, as we all know, which is a much loved service, is important to this community. Irrespective of government announcements, this administration is in favour of the provision that is provided at the Lee Manning Centre and continues to support its function.
Councillor Logan, do you wish to come back on that?
No, it's a second.
No, it's a second question. Okay.
Second question is, Chair, is relating to the same issue or the same section, which is immediately below it, which I must admit I don't understand, and I was just wondering if somebody could explain it. Increased running expenditure in the regeneration team will be offset against vacancy savings. So for the average person, that reads like we're doing more, but actually we've got less people to be doing it. So it seems to be a double negative, and I was wondering if that could be explained, please.
Who's best to answer that? Councillor Swords is the regeneration portfolio.
Yeah, I'll answer this substantively the question, then I'll James come back on the detail. I think I've made clear enough over the past 4 months that I can assure you the regeneration team will not be doing less than it did previously. In fact, it will be doing an awful lot more because we're going to roll out and deliver the biggest programme of regeneration since Harlow was built. We're going to answer those questions that have been for too long ignored, and the regeneration team will be staffed accordingly, I think is a safe way of putting it. I'll ask Jane to come on the detail.
So the detail is there was a specific piece of work we had to do for the levelling up fund bid that came from the regeneration budget, and that's paid for through the vacancy saving we had at the time. That's now been filled.
Thank you. Councillor Vince, you had your hand up again?
Yeah, it's always to express my jealousy that Councillor Charles has taken on the role of wellbeing community, which I had during COVID and never got to visit anything at all for a year, and I was gutted, so I'm very jealous of him, as he knows. It's certainly not a loaded question, but I just wondered if you could elaborate in terms of the Lee Manning Centre, what services are currently being offered to the service users.
Charles? Yeah, happy to do that. So during the COVID period, I'll just take that when we come to the services being provided at the moment. The staff are going out to make sure that those existing individual care package provision within the Lee Manning Centre, when we go to that centre for whether it's respite provision or activities, that they're making sure that their welfare was maintained. Really challenging circumstances for them. These are vulnerable people, it's really important. As we've gradually come out of the lockdown, the centre has started to do more activities. It was great that there have been arts and crafts sessions with those individuals to get out. One of the key things that I think is important about it is it addresses social isolation, absolutely fundamental. And those types of activities are the staff that really do care passionately about the people they support, in line with the support obviously with Essex County Council. It's really important that that localised community social care provision is maintained, because it will be something that I always shout loudly about as someone who has been in the social care sector and been an advocate for it.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Any further questions? Councillor Saggers.
Chair, as a councillor who has visited the Lee Manning Centre in the last 7 days to see what provision was there, they've had new kitchen fitted, they've had some decoration work done. We actually met with some of the lucky people who were having an activity day there. They are ready to go, and they're looking to have a new sensory room put in. So there's lots of work going on, and they're happy to engage. They're just waiting on referrals to come in, obviously post-COVID, so they can offer more service. They're also currently looking at filling vacancies that were lost during COVID, so they can offer more whilst there.
That's lovely to hear, Councillor Savers, and I think it's really important that we get the message out that these services are opening up in post-pandemic, and I know the Learning Centre is well loved on both sides of the chamber and around the town, so it's good to hear that. Thank you. Any other questions on the Joint Finance and Performance Report? If not, then I'll move it formally. Can I look for a seconder? Councillor Swords, thank you. Is that agreed? Thank you. We move to item 10, the Housing Revenue Account Quarter 1 Finance Report for 21-22.
Sorry, Chair, we're not doing comments in the last section, we're just doing questions. We do question and comments.
We do, but no one else was indicating. Sorry if I didn't.
I was saying I didn't realise we did, well, just to make a comment really. That was.
Did you want to make a comment?
Is that okay? It's not.
Well, technically we moved on, but I'm happy to allow you to make a comment.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, it's just really to comment on page 38 of the report, which praises the careful management of the budget throughout this very difficult time. I think we should give out credit to officers and councillors that have been involved in that. I will specifically draw attention to Councillor Dan, who's sitting next to me, who has sadly made a decision that he's not going to continue as a councillor, and I think he will be a great loss, not only to this chamber, but to the people of Harlow. And I also want to pay a thanks to the Playhouse staff for all they have done during this pandemic, which has been, really above and beyond. And they've done things that actually aren't in their contract of employment, but they've done them for the good of our town. And I'm thinking specifically of the work they did in the town centre and the work they did with the setting on the vaccine things. So I just want to put on record my thanks to them throughout this difficult time, because they really have gone above and beyond. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. As you'll know, that we've all welcomed and continue to welcome the work of our officers over the COVID period and looking back to getting everything back to normal. And can I join you in wishing Councillor Towns every success into retirement? Item 10, the Housing Revenue Account, Quarter 1 Finance Report 21-22. Councillor Carter, can I look to you to move and introduce this, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yes. Also, I'm going to go through all the reports, just pick up a few issues. As everybody is aware, we are moving out of very difficult times. There are recovery plans in place, and the situation is beginning to improve. For example, on paragraph 5, repairs and maintenance, they anticipate that the backlog of standard priority jobs will take a further 2 or 4 months to clear. There are regular meetings between housing and HCS to push managers forward. And that appears to be proceeding well. Paragraph 7 is quite interesting in referring to impairment allowance or provision for bad debts. There has been a decrease in the series of arrears over £1,000 by 27%, and a slight decrease in cases over £2,000 by 4%. It's been virtually impossible to take severe recovery action. This will take about 12 weeks to get to that court hearing. Now that we can take people to court to recover. Excuse me, sorry. Another good bit of surprising news is the recovery of service charges. We've already recovered in the first quarter 33%, as against a total of 22%. So I can't quite explain how that's arisen, but I welcome it. But that's really the main part of the news. Happy to take questions.
Are there any questions? Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you very much, Chair. My question is regarding page 65, dwelling rents and void properties, Chair. While certainly I'm well aware of why we have so many voids at the moment, and that's been a very topical subject in the town of management properties, and I certainly would criticise why we've got so many properties void. I'm well aware of the reasons why, and it's not a criticism at all. But I am interested, Chair, in the recovery part of the void turnaround. Before the elections, I was working very closely with senior housing officers and HTS to work in a recovery programme for repairs and voids, and I'm very pleased with the comments that Councillor Carter's made about the progress in certainly maintenance and repairs, but the recovery part of voids, I've recently become aware that Councillor Carter's made a press release saying that he's hoping that to get the backlog to a target of 115 by March. So my question is to Councillor Carter is how confident he is of reaching that target. Thank you.
Councillor Carter.
Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson, and very much appreciate your question. As you're probably aware, I have regular meetings with both with the housing and also with HDS. This situation is being monitored on a weekly basis. The numbers are changing all the time. More voids come along, more voids are identified. We begin to pick up on the selection process to actually get people into them. So it is a fluid situation, but it is being closely managed, as I say, both within housing and between us and within HDS as well. And as confident as one can be with all those variables, I am confident it will be down to around 115. I won't guarantee at this stage it will be 115.
Thank you, Councillor Carter. Councillor Wilkinson, does that cover your question?
No, I don't. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions on the report? Okay, Councillor Carter, do you want to move this?
I so moved, Chair.
And I'll second it. Is there anyone that wants to make a comment on the Housing Revenue Account Quarter 1 financial report? Okay. Can we agree that report then? Agree. Thank you. Item 11, the capital programmes, Quarter 1 financial report 21-22. And again, Councillor Carter, I'm going to come to you.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously it covers both the housing and the non-housing capital programmes. Technically we only have one capital programme, but for management purposes we split it into two. I'd say this is a very confident looking capital programme with programmes totaling some £61 million just for this year. Obviously the figures are inflated by sort of carryovers from last year with delays due to COVID, which are still continuing. Certainly with active management, with HCS and others, these programmes are beginning to roll out. One of the, well, probably the most important aspect of certainly the housing capital programme is the fire safety works. We have there's a contract later on in the agenda for the first three buildings, but I'd like to think it goes without saying, and I know Councillor Wilkinson, it was his priority as well. We did work together, but we on this side certainly supported what he was doing on this. As I said, fire safety is obviously a high priority for us, but what none of us want to do is to worry or concern people. Our high-rise towers are inherently safe, and none of them have any dubious cladding. That's all been looked at in the past. Housing staff visit each block every week to look for lighting, doors, things such as corridors. They're inspected monthly, but with fire services for a more specialised look. And I think we are one of the few councils who actually publish our fire risk assessments for our high-rise blocks for anybody to examine, and colleagues were delivered to every flat. I'm not sure when the last time that was done, I'm told that's done annually. So people are aware of what we were doing. Now, later on in the programme we're only dealing with 3 blocks. There are 3 further 2/3 contracts to come later on this year for the remaining blocks, and as we've already been asked why we're doing them in that sequence. That's because of the continuing risk assessment that we carried out, that's the which is the most important. As I said just now, I have been supporting the previous administration in their management of this, and one of the things is they have been putting money aside to cover these, because there are further recommendations to come out of the inquiry. We obviously don't know what they are, but we have to be prepared for them. The second priority in our agenda on this is new council house building or pipeline. There are 2 projects already underway at Bushycroft and the Hill. I'm working with Councillor Swords on reviewing the pipeline, making sure we are being value for money, they're in the right houses in the right places, and we are looking to be awarding a contract of some sort for a number of developments over the next 12-18 months. So that is one of our key priorities, and we are seeing that through. Yeah, I think that's about it. If you've got any questions on the non-housing capital side, I'm not going to defer to somebody else, but if you do have any questions on the housing capital programme, happy to take them.
Thank you, Councillor Carter, for a comprehensive introduction to this report. Are there any questions on the report? No. Would Councillor Carter can ask you to formally move it?
I formally move it, Chair.
And I will second that. Does anyone want to debate this item? In which case, can I reinforce the comments that Councillor Carter made, particularly around fire safety works? I remember a debate in this chamber with Councillor Wilkinson just after the horrific tragedy that was Grenfell, and I rose to speak then to say I was really, it's difficult to be happy at that time because of the tragedy itself, but I was reassured for our residents that we were able to say at the time that Harlow was one of the leading lights for its fire safety works and its town blocks, and had been under administrations of a variety of different colours over the past 30 years. It's one where I don't think there has been any disagreement in this chamber about the need to make these works and make these changes, nor about the planning for the future of the Grenfell inquiry and the recommendations that come out of that. I do think, Councillor Carter, you're absolutely correct. When we debate this and we mention fire safety works, we need to caveat that with the need to not scare our residents and to reassure them that the officers are doing those weekly checks, are doing those annual checks, and that all of our buildings are up to safety. And they do meet the current fire safety legislation. Where they don't, that is where the immediate works and prioritisation of works happens. So thank you for introducing the report, and I echo what you said on the fire safety works. There being no one else asking to speak, can I ask that we agree that? Agreed. Thank you. Item 12, the Annual Treasury Management Report for 2021. Now, in Councillor Perrin's absence, I will introduce and move this report. I understand that Councillor Leffart should be able to answer any detailed questions, but anything particularly detailed we might have to reserve for either the officer or Councillor Perrin on his return. Can I just say that this is about the Treasury management for the previous financial year. Again, this is a report where every year it's been welcomed, I think, in recent history from both sides. And our Treasury management team do a particularly good job at outperforming the market time and time again. I hark back to the last time I was leader of the council, and I was on an ENTP, the European New Towns, with partners from other European New Towns, when the Icelandic bank crash. Tony, were you there with me at the time? You may well have.
No, denial knowledge.
Yeah. And most leaders from all of the different councils around the European continent and from the other British leaders were running around on their phone absolutely furious about the fact that their council just lost millions and millions of pounds in the Icelandic collapse. But because of our active treasury management strategy that, as I say, the staff have done brilliantly over the years, we have been insulated from that. We'd already identified Iceland as a risk in that administration and administrations since. So I offer my congrats to our team for their continued performance. I'll go to questions around the room first, if there are any questions on the Treasury Management Report. In which case I'll formally move it, and can I seek a second, please? Thank you, John. And would anyone wish to debate the report? Everyone as equally happy as I am with our Treasury Management team? All right. In which case, can I see that item agreed?
Agreed.
Okay. Item 13, the town plan draft for consultation. Can I hand over to Councillors Harlow and Councillor Swords? Mike, do you want to go first? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Harlow is in a unique position. There are a myriad of different policies, organisations and strategies that are in place. Just to run through a few of them, we have our own local plan, which is approved. We have the Harlow and Gilston Garden Town. We have, as we discussed earlier, the master plan coming forward for the town centre. We also have the town centre action plan, which is going to come forward. We have the Harlow Growth Board, the UK Innovation Corridor, Discover Harlow, the Harlow Chamber of Commerce, Public Health England, all sorts of different policies, strategies and timetables. So early on in the administration, we determined that there needed to be something to pull all these together, a vision for Harlow. So here we have the document. It's called Harlow at 100, which is conveniently our 100th anniversary in 27 years' time. But it isn't my document, it isn't Dan's document, it isn't the council's document, it has to be Harlow's document. So this is only the start of the process. This is the initial draft that is now going to go out to comprehensive consultation with residents to get their views. This will happen over probably 8 weeks, possibly longer, and we'll also be doing some engaging consultation, especially with the younger members of the community, because obviously this is going to affect them in the years to come. You'll see the town plan covers a huge number of different topics, some of which don't seem very connected. As we go through the consultation, this might actually be added to, quite comprehensively, I should think, and some might come out. It all depends on what is revealed from the residents as we go through the process. And I do encourage everybody here as well to participate in that consultation and give us your views. So I'd like to move that.
Thank you, Councillor Harlow. Councillor Swords, your name is on here as a joint portfolio holder. Would you like to give your introduction?
I would indeed, thank you. And it's an honour to second the report when I do. And I'll focus my remarks mostly on regeneration and renewal, and then come to answer any questions that I'm sure there will be. As I've said, for far too long, I think the questions of regeneration and renewal have been ignored in all corners of the town, states and key forms of infrastructure have suffered from decades of underinvestment, epitomised most of all by the town centre. Failure to act because these questions have been too hard to answer has resulted in some of the most deprived neighbourhoods in the country, and even before the pandemic, job growth and educational attainment had stalled. Ageing infrastructure, poor housing stock and port sections placed with many disused buildings blight the town. So Frederick Gilbert's foresight in the form of the master plan of the Harlow New Town in 1947 envisaged the town as an organism which would go on changing and being rebuilt as the needs of the people altered. Well, now, 24 years on, we have reached the great rebuilding stage and we will rise to that occasion. This cannot be delivered with a piecemeal tinkering at the edges nor a cosmetic new lick of paint. We will answer though for those forgotten pleas with the biggest programme of regeneration and renewal since the new town was built. In want of a better metaphor, perhaps pinging off the gyros of self-doubt. I would passionately say actually unleashing the potential of Harlow to spread opportunity and prosperity for. I think the town plan is the first major step in the process of doing such a thing. And I really don't underestimate the task, but to those who say that they've tried to before, or to the doubters, the doomsters, the gloomsters. And I think to those who bet against Harlow, they're going to get it wrong again, because our programme will not only ensure that Harlow truly is fit for the future, but that opportunity and prosperity are reflected no matter which street corner you stand on, no matter where you look from your window. Harlow truly will be the best town in Britain to raise your family and send your children to school. It truly will be the best place to start business, and it truly will be the best place to live and to be. And as I've said, the journey to that destination will be kick-started with a radically transformational regeneration renewal programme, and I think that this plan sets out the building blocks to do so. But coming in on the back of what Mike said, this is not our plan. This is the plan for the next 37 years of the town, and therefore consultation is the most important part.
Thank you, Councillor Swords and Councillor Harlow. Can I open the floor up to questions first of all? I saw Councillor Danvers' hand go up first, so can I go to you, please?
Thank you, Chair. Back to reality. First of all, I'm still very unclear, having attended quite a few of these meetings, what the difference is with the local plan and this. Secondly, the local plan was years in the making. This has been cobbled together in a couple of months. If it is to be this kind of window dressing for your new council, how much, I did actually ask this at the last meeting and wasn't given an answer, how much is this cosmetic exercise costing?
Councillor Swords?
Just for clarification, I assume you're posing the cosmetic exercise as the plan itself. I don't have a figure for how much the plan costs, but I can write to you with such details. But as you talk about reality, I think the reality is pretty clear that the previous Labour administration had no plan. You can carp and criticise. We're open to consultation. I look forward to hearing your views on such a plan. But at least we have a plan, because the previous administration never had a plan in the 9 years. And I think that is reflected, as I said, no matter which window you look out of in the town. Kids might most warm in the town centre. So carp from the sidelines, as you said, which. But at least we've got a plan, and I believe we'll deliver on it.
Thank you, Councillor Swords. Councillor Dowd, do you have a second question?
Just one final thing then. As opposed to the local plan, which can be legally enforceable in the town, what is the legal status of this?
I think I'll go to Councillor Harlow for that.
If it is approved in its final form, it will become a material consideration.
Councillor Harlow, could you go a bit further for those maybe members of the public or councillors who don't sit on the planning committee, also the development management committee? What does it becoming a material planning consideration mean?
It means that the contents of the document have to be taken into consideration when a planning application is being considered.
Thank you very much, Councillor.
Based on the local plan.
Are there any? Sorry, Councillor Dowd, I didn't hear that. Was there a further
Based
question?
on the local plan, I assume.
Further questions? Councillor Duck.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a few, unfortunately, but I don't think it'll come as any particular surprise. The first one...
I think, Councillor Duck, we welcome the questions, just like we welcome the consultation on this.
As far as I'm concerned, the more engagement we have with our community, for the community to take ownership of our community moving forward, rather than the faces in this room, is a much better way of socialism and democracy. So it is something that I would absolutely endorse. Similar to the first question that Councillor Danvers has asked, is it possible, Councillor Harlow, to tell me how much funding has been set aside for this consultation process over an 8-week period? Who has been commissioned to carry out this consultation? Because I'm sure we want it to be robust and as independent and impartial as we possibly can. And what is the methodology to assess the outcome? Because the difficulty is your questions are all open-ended, so the document doesn't actually tell us how are we going to be able to assess whether or not we've actually arrived. So those are my first 3 of 9. So I don't know if you want to take those. I'll give you, yeah.
I'll go to Councillor Harlow first on that.
Well, my answer to the first three will be quite short, in that the consultation plan has not yet been finalised. So I can't answer your three questions.
Okay, but I'm assuming, Councillor Harlow, you have identified the costs to the organisation for carrying out this important milestone, and therefore I'm wondering whether or not you could share what the costs are, and is that going to be commissioned through an independent body?
The officers have not costed the programme yet because the programme hasn't been finalised. They have suggestions of what should be in it, and they're yet to come back with their views. But as soon as we have them, I'm quite happy to share them with you.
And Councillor Holloway, can I just ask, does the full commissioning of the consultation really rely on Cabinet endorsing and passing the proposal to consult tonight?
Does it need to? Yes.
It does, doesn't it?
All right.
Can't before or not, as the case may be, Councillor Holloway.
Well, as soon as we've determined what the programme is going to be, we can bring it back for approval.
Thank you. Councillor Durkin, you have a further 6 questions over there.
Well, actually, I've now got 7. So I do apologise. But sorry, the way I'm reading it, and correct me if I'm wrong, the recommendations is that Cabinet endorses the vision and aspiration, which is an indication that they already agree with the vision and aspiration before we even go to consultation. Cabinet authorises public consultation to be undertaken. So have we got a timeline of when the consultation will commence? Because your response is that you haven't got the funding set up, you don't know who's going to do it, you don't know how they're going to do it. So in your world, when is it that something is going to happen?
If I can direct you to paragraph 8 of the report, Councillor Durkin, that answers your question. What's your next question, please?
Would Councillor agree with me that the vision statement may well be too narrow, because the vision is to raise your family, but clearly we've got a number of people in this town that don't have families and choose not to have families. So is it an opportunity that we could revisit that and re-look at it, as clearly we don't want to be criticised against one particular group in our community?
Can I go to Councillor Swords on that first?
The vision is not to raise your family. I think, as you will see, there's quite a few words in the vision, not just a few. But I accept the premise of the point you're making, and of course, as Councillor Harbour may not have just set out, there will be an 8-week consultation period. So I'm sure you can put forward such thoughts in the consultation.
I learned the word family the other day, which is friends who are family. And I think family exists on a number of different levels and dimensions, Councillor Durkin, but I welcome the question actually, because I think we all need to be challenged on our thinking, we all need to be challenged on the dimensionality of our thinking, and I think that's why a proper, long consultation on this is really important, because I think any politician that sits in this chamber or any chamber up and down the country and tells you they've got all the answers is lying to you. I don't think any of us have all the answers or all the right ideas, and I'm really interested to see what the public have to say on this plan and this vision. Over to you again, Councillor.
Thank you very much. On page 96, the section is rebuild of town centre. But would you agree with me that actually perhaps the real question should be is what is actually a town centre? Because historically it was a place that you came to shop, whereas recently it's about leisure, pleasure, and meeting and greeting. So would you accept that actually part of the rebuild of a town centre is to refocus and redesignate or define what a town centre is?
Councillor Swords.
Yes. Is the short answer, Tony. I can't possibly let you away with one word answers. So yes, you're absolutely correct, because the town centre has moved on so far from what it once was, and I'm sure when we all leave this council meeting this evening and want to go and enjoy Harlow's maritime economy, we will find it very difficult to do so because there currently is no such thing in the town centre. There's very little, if at all, any high quality residential in the town centre, and I've always struggled. I can't remember whether it was council that introduced them, but in the so-called, I don't have the date with me, I think it was 2018, so-called jazzing up of Market Square, in which some table tennis tables were installed without any bats or balls. That's not what I'm talking about when we talk about leisure. So yes, you're absolutely correct. And again, it's probably answering those questions that have been ignored because I don't think table tennis table answers the leisure question.
And I think, to add to that, Councillor Durkin, I think even more so as we emerge from the pandemic, now's the really right time to start asking some of those questions, because what 2 years ago may have been the answer to what a town centre looks like is now very different, and in fact is changing day by day. I think you and I have both, in our tours around other new towns, have seen some of the interesting things that have been done to new town centres, but we've also seen the gradual decline of the town centre experience, the shopping experience around the country. And I think a town needs to be innovative, it needs to think outside of the box. And that's why I really welcome people from all walks of life getting involved in the consultation on this town plan, because I think businesses in the town need to tell us what they want to do, what they want to see, how they want to serve our residents. And actually, I really welcome that intervention from you, because I think it really is the time to ask these questions. And the fact that we are left with a blank sheet of paper from the previous administration, the fact that we can design this town plan itself, really gives the residents the chance to put their mark on it, and not just councillors in this chamber.
Well, I welcome you welcoming my comments, and I hope that that's actually reflected in the draft consultation that you are going to agree tonight. You're actually agreeing it and you're endorsing it, but we've already picked out that there are key elements of it that are missing, but hopefully we can support you to find those missing links. Moving on also to page 96, you talk about social and physical infrastructure that should move at pace with new development. Would you agree with me that actually social and physical development should come in advance of the new houses and the new homes? Because historically, the funding for these particular areas have always followed after the buildings have been occupied.
To Councillor Swords on that, or Councillor Hardware, or keep jumping, I saw you jumping to stand on the microphone.
One of the key aspects of Harlow and Guildford Development Town is that the social and the physical, the soft and the hard infrastructure comes as the first houses are built. And an example of that is the Gilston Villages, where the Saw River crossing is coming before. We've got Junction 7A coming before any houses. So it is coming before the development. And we'll continue that through the other developments.
Councillor Swords, did you want to add anything to that?
Just yes, in answer to Tony's question, I agree.
Oh God.
That's
Can I just correct Councillor Hardware? Junction 4 out of 7, which Andrew will recall, has been debated for 20 years plus because Harlow was fundamentally misdesigned by only actually having one exit point or entrance point on the M11. So it has actually nothing to do with this particular issue. It has been a continuous campaign going off generations from all previous MPs to achieve that success. If I can...
Councillor Durkin, I think we need to be stand corrected on that item, in that Harlow was very well designed. I've never heard anyone suggest that it wasn't. I think he designed when he was told the motorway was going to run to the west of the town, and that's why all of the industrial areas are on the west of the town, and then the government put the motorway in to the east of the town. So let's give Sir Freddie his due. I think he designed the town very well, but I think it was the placement of the motorway that was the problem. But can I ask you to move on in your question?
Yeah, with respect, Chair, my comment was not a criticism of the legacy of Gibbard. It was actually a confirmation of the hypocrisy of government that don't actually listen to what is right and proper, very similar to the government we have currently. In relation to, again on page 96, we're talking about sustainable transport networks. Will this also allow the opportunity for consultation over the issue about the Stort crossing?
The consultation on the Stort crossing is taking place now. I mean, the applications went in last year, and there was a statutory consultation period which has concluded, but people are still commenting on it, and it will come before committees or joint committees probably early next year.
Councillor Swords?
Yeah, I was just going to add, well, might took the post-statement question, but I'll come back on something else that Toby said about government's not listening, unless my memory really is foggy. Despite having 13 years of Labour government, it's when it was a Conservative government that invested £81 million to construct Junction 7A. So, you can dig at this government all it wants, but there is no town in the country having more direct government investment into it than this one. And it's all come in the last 11 years of a Conservative government, which you may have missed, the people of Harlow voted for every single time.
Can I also directly answer your question on the consultation on the Stort crossing? I would have welcomed a great deal more consultation on the potential of the Stort crossing, and we had the opportunity to do that during the development of the local plan that Councillor Danders mentioned earlier, a local plan that was moved by the former administration of the council. We requested as a group at the time, and you remember there was a debate about whether it would be a Regulation 18 or 19 consultation, and the administration under Danny Purton's guidance, rest in peace, decided to go for a consultation just on the technicalities because they believed it had been consulted on widely enough. My group voted against that and voted against the local plan. The local plan that you passed, Councillor Durkin, that has the footings of the bridge that you're talking about in the local plan and must now be relied upon as a material planning document.
Thank you for the clarification of your view on that particular issue, but we all know in this chamber that there is a mass demonstration that's going to be happening on Saturday morning in the town centre, plus other activities, so we cannot deny the fact is that there is a big movement and a big concern about the environmental impact that has taken place. But I do welcome, I think in general, the comments that you all made is that those people who have got concerns about the Stort crossing will not be excluded from this consultation over these particular issues.
No, indeed not, Councillor Durkin. To answer that specific question, they will not be excluded from the consultation. They were excluded from the consultation on the local plan because of how the council decided to consult on it and the last chance they had to talk about this. But I'm keen for open and transparent consultation. I'm going to limit my comments further on the bridge because I am a substitute on the Development Management Committee, and I may be called upon to sit on the planning application and advise other members of boards, supplementary members of the Development Management Committee, to refrain from comments on details about the bridge. Councillor Durkin, I think you've got two left from my...
Yeah, well actually I'm going to put them in two parts actually, which is linked very much to the last comment that you actually made, Chair, so I do welcome that initiative. Would it be possible for you now to confirm what consultation has taken place as defined in 7.4 regarding securing public transport linked to Epping Underground and extending the underground network to Harlow? Could you please confirm what consultation has currently taken place with Transport for London over this announcement that you've made?
Can I turn to Councillor Swords?
Councillor Durkin well knows, because he seems to have called a few bids into big organisations, if not successful, but nevertheless. You have to, pull a proposal together. You don't just go and sit down Sadiq Khan in the pub and say, can we have an extension of the tube, please? As this town plan sets out, we're consulting on whether that, whether that is what residents are looking for. If he looks at 7.4, as well as many other options, as I've said on numerous media outlets, the biggest problem I think residents face, particularly with commuting, is the cost. And I was quite pleased to see that a couple of weeks after I made those comments, the Labour Party called for the extension of the Odyssey card, which is something I said at the time. So I'm glad they've now come to that conclusion. Of course, in their 9 years, they never achieved such a thing. But in direct response to his question, you have to put a proposal together fully before you would take it to the body that's set to decide on that proposal. You don't just have a chat with your mate in the pub about it and see, get his agreement on it.
Councillor Durkin, I think you've got one final question.
No. Well, can I just clarify one particular point as I have been referred to? I am not a mate of anybody from the mayoral office, etc., etc. So, but can I just confirm that to date there has been no communication about this proposal for Transport for London, because clearly your press statement, unfortunately, has been read in a very, very different way.
Councillor Durkin, I can assure you there's been no conversation and there was no press statement. There was a response to the press when they inquired. There's been a number of responses to the press when they've inquired. This administration has never said anything other than we're bringing forward a plan to consult people that includes whether we should look at the feasibility of an extension to the central line. Your final question.
Yeah, and my final question, Chair, I'll try to put into two parts because they are linked together, which is about 10.2. In the consultation, you state on page 104 that you're reviewing existing leisure facilities, but you make no comment at all about creating new leisure facilities. And on my final point, which is 12.1, it is disappointing that neighbourhood regeneration has 7 lines in the whole document. And I just seek assurances that even though it's 7 lines, there will be full and robust consultation, meaningful consultation, because Andrew, like you, we talk about the town centre, but actually the hubs that really make the place work is our hatches and our local areas. That's the end of my questions, thank you.
Councillor Durkin, I'll take the first of those two. If you can read 3 paragraphs on from the 10.2 that you quoted about reviewing existing leisure facilities, you'll see 10b, a question, are there any sporting or leisure facilities that are lacking or requiring improvement? I think that should cover your question. The second part of the question, can I go to Councillor Sword?
Yes, you took the words out of my mouth. But nevertheless, yes, you are correct. 7 lines, which I suppose is probably more than, again, the previous Labour administration did to regenerate the neighbourhoods, the estates, the hatches, the employment areas. But nevertheless, if he reads the first line of those 7, you will see a once-in-a-generation programme of neighbourhood renewal. Now, Councillor Dan has just stipulated earlier that perhaps I'm a bit over-optimistic on such matters. I mean it will be a once-in-a-generation programme because, as I said, for 74 years there has been no regeneration in such areas. Now, if he, Councillor Durkin wishes to point to, I don't know, perhaps the Stowe as an example of a neighbourhood centre regeneration scheme that he rolled out, that's not the ambition I'm talking of. I'm talking of full and proper regeneration and renewal in all corners of the town. As I said, it won't matter what window you look from, what street corner you stand on, you will see the genuine, full and proper programme of regeneration that will have been delivered by the time this town plan concludes in 2047. So again, I welcome this question. Again, I think it highlights the fact that whilst obviously this job, he delivered on none of these things that he now questions, but we will.
Further questions I've had you, Jeremy, Councillor Harvey, signalling for quite some time. I'm sorry it's taken a while to get to be past Councillor Durkin's questions.
No, that's fine, thank you, Councillor Johnson. I wanted to pick up on, and of course my screen has just gone as soon as I get the floor. I wanted to pick up on a point that Councillor Durkin began with, if we can cast our minds back, which was to the vision. And we haven't had a conversation about this, and if we had, we might have put this question into one. But anyway, I'm just going to kind of build on what he said. And it really is in the spirit of doing something together which is positive, not in the spirit of trying to attack something here. But I was really, really struck by the language of the vision, and I felt it was very business oriented and very growth oriented. The word growth is in there, I think, 8 times. Economic powerhouse, prosperity, competitive, sustained business investment, thousands of jobs, innovation, world-class digital, all fantastic things, please don't get me wrong, but I don't see Councillor Charles' fingerprints on this statement, and that would be to demonstrate that this town will also be inclusive. So further on in the agenda we have a 40-page report about accommodation for people with disabilities. I don't think that if I was a person who had disabilities and was reading this vision statement and was being asked to consult on it, that I would see myself in the vision you're articulating. And when I was working in the area with Jane, and you know, I had a kind of catchphrase, which I know it's a bit morbid, but I used to say, you know, I want Harlow to be the best place to live, to raise your children, to have a business, and to die. And I know that's morbid, but you know, actually, there's a lot of truth to that. We want people to end their lives here with dignity and feeling that they're a part of this town. So I was really hoping that before it goes out to consultation, you might revisit that, because you do ask people to prioritise the things that matter to them. And if those things aren't there, then they're not getting the opportunity to be considered for priority. And the other thing that I wanted just to make a bid for is I think that there is also something so precious in what I would call the kind of iconic services or iconic heritage. So we talked about the Leah Manning Centre, and I'm not saying that you need to say anything here, we will have the best powerhouse Leah Manning Centre in the world with digital facilities. I'm just saying, have some recognition in there that going into the next 37, or I thought the mouse was 27, but I'm bad at it. You know, that we will take this wonderful heritage that's been, you know, created and build on it and preserve it. You know, I think if people don't see that recognised for the value it's given to the town, the place it has in people's hearts, you will have a narrow consultation. And I just wanted to encourage you to think about that.
Councillor, thank you. I think it was more of a statement than a question. I think there are a series of questions in there.
Can you take that into account, please?
So I think I'll go to both of them in a minute. I think Councillor Charles may want to come in as well. So Councillor Salisbury, you want to explain? Councillor Charles?
Thank you, Chair. I think what is important to recognise is that this administration will, forgive me, that this administration will be publishing a community resilience strategy, and one of the fundamental backbones of that strategy is social inclusion, which I know actually, quite genuinely, amongst the councillors here of all political colours is very important. It's a bedrock of this town, and that will be showcased and articulated as part of that. And of course, the town plan consultation is complementing the suite of strategic vision statements that this administration is putting out in its early days to cement the direction of travel. I don't think growth is a dirty word. I think that growth boosts economic opportunities, but also social. It boosts the resilience of communities, and we elaborate on this within the community resilience strategy. So don't just take the town plan in isolation. There is a suite of vision statements and strategies that will have targets, that will have specific metrics to deliver all those pledges as we progress into the work plan as we head towards the winter. So I'm very confident, and I back my colleagues in the work they're doing here to have genuine consultation backed by a vision for the community that is due to be published very soon.
Councillor Source, have anything to that?
Yeah, I think you made a very powerful point actually, Councillor Harvey, because you're absolutely correct in that, you know, I've never visited another town in Britain that is comparable in those sort of things as Harlow is. And it's absolutely, you know, right that is reflected in this document as it proceeds through the process as it will. You know, Councillor Charles has already hinted to, this is not the only plan, this is not the only document coming forward from the council. council, and in, particularly the strategy that you just highlighted, will set out in far more detail those sort of things. But I very much accept the point you make about uniqueness and some of the things you've highlighted, such as the Learning Centre and many other services. And all we are aiming to do is to build on that. I also, will make no apology for labouring the point that we want to create thousands of new jobs, because by creating thousands of new jobs, we're giving people a secure paycheck every month. And for generations to come, whether it's in education, infrastructure, and jobs, no matter what form we talk about growth in, all of those things are not about shiny new buildings. They're not about concrete, beautiful new cycle tracks. I'm not getting there somewhere. It's about improving people's lives in this town, which is exactly why, I'm pleased that you also use such language as the best place, the best town in Britain to raise your family. And no matter what point we look at in people's lives, that's the aspiration. It's about people. It's not about buildings or anything such like. So yeah, I very much accept the point you make.
And indeed, Councillor Swords, I think, when we say the best place to work, live, spend leisure time, that's not just if you're able-bodied or if you're a white man between 40 and 45. It's everybody. It's everybody in the town, reflective of all of the people. Councillor Harlow, you want to come back?
Yes, just to say I'm not anti-growth at all. I don't hope that wasn't the message I was suggesting. This was additional, not instead of. I had and I also want to make the point, just to Councillor Charles, I was a bit surprised because actually, as I understood it, and actually the value I see in this is an overarching document. Councillor Hardware began this thing by reeling off a whole lot of different disparate things, including the Chamber of Commerce, which I thought was a little bit unkind because I don't think they would see themselves as one of the council's initiatives, but let's let that pass. But I thought that the value of this thing, as you are putting it forward to us, and the scale of the consultation that is going to sit behind it and be justified, is that it sits atop everything, which is why I make the point. I'm sure that within the community resilience strategy there will be, inclusivity and all those things one would expect to find it here, but as I understand it from what you're saying, this sits atop. My second question is about the transport point, item 7, and I just wondered if you could tell us what HEART is, H-E-R-T. It's not something that I've come across yet, and I was wondering if you could illuminate us on about that.
Councillor Harlow?
I'm talking about it's the Hearts and Essex. Rapid transport. It's a A414 corridor from Hemel to Harlow. There is a forum that has been, for a couple of years now, deciding how it's going to improve transport between, not just between, who want to go to Hemel or to Harlow from Hemel.
Everywhere in between.
Everywhere in between. My mother lives in Hemel. I think it's a fantastic idea, but I'm a bit unique probably that. But no, it's to join all the bits up in there as well.
What would be the mode of transport?
They haven't decided yet, but they're looking at all the options.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Harvey, you have another question?
No, I don't, thank you. Thank you.
That you're not sure. Councillor Lindsay.
Thank you, Chair. And this is a little bit of a bugbear of mine, and it's been a bugbear of mine for many years, and it reached on the national curriculum, but it's not anymore, which is about questionnaires and the nature of how you write a questionnaire to ensure that you don't get biased responses. So it's a maths teacher question. I apologise for Councillor Swords. No, not maths again, sorry, mate. But it's just with regards, I don't like the way the questions are worded with "do you agree?" I just feel that automatically you get a response that well, yes, obviously. Do you know what I mean? And I just wonder, in terms of the consultation, because I totally agree with the words that Councillor Durkee said about the importance of consultation. Absolutely. Is the consultation restricted to just the questions in this document? Are you going to review the questions in this document, or are you going to allow responses that are broader and more ranging? Really, that's my question.
Councillor Harlow first, and then Councillor Swords.
Yes, if not all of the questions will be open questions, so residents responding can basically say what they want. It won't be restricted to options, shall we say.
And Councillor Swords?
Councillor Durkin was nodding behind Councillor Vince. At the start he said that we've got two open-ended questions, how on earth we're going to measure such a thing. Now Councillor Vince says we've got two closed questions and Councillor Durkin agrees with him. I'm proving it. Yes, and you will see as the consultation is brought forward that exactly the point you've just raised will be included.
Any further questions? Councillor Vince?
You get my point. I'll take it from Jess, but yeah, my point is not necessarily that they should be open because they should. I just think you've got to be very careful not to steer the answer from the person asking the question. That's my point. But anyway, my other question is page 105, library strategy. Obviously it talks about the regeneration of the town centre library, which I'm sure we welcome, but there's no mention of the satellite libraries, those in Staple Tyre, obviously one on Harlow, and I just wondered, can we have a mention of them, please, to reassure us that they are part of your long-term plan?
Councillor Swords?
Yes.
Short questions are answered. I'll quite good sometimes, Councillor Swords.
Councillor Vince, anything else?
That's it.
Thank you. Councillor Edwards, I saw you indicate.
Got a couple of questions. I was interested in listening to Councillor Swords talking about this being a plan for the whole of the town, and in particular for the regeneration of estates and not just the hatches but all of the estates. So my question is, why isn't that reflected in this report? It isn't. As far as I can see, there is one line which talks about buildings. It says new buildings will be recognised as being exemplary in mitigating against and adapting to climate change, while existing buildings will be retrofitted to ensure that they're playing their part. There are thousands of buildings out there that need retrofitting. You wouldn't know that from this particular report. There's numerous estates that need regenerating. You wouldn't know that from this report, but the way that this is laid out. There's a whole lot of concentration on the new build, but there's hardly any concentration on the existing build. So that's my first question is, why isn't that been reflected in the report?
Councillor Swords? Councillor Evans?
Forgive me if I've misunderstood you, but I think point 12.1 on page 105 spells out very clearly that following once in a generation programme neighbourhood renewal estate of our estates, hatches, neighbourhood centres and assets, employment areas, leisure and cultural assets and key infrastructure at Harlow's neighbourhoods will be injected with new lease of life to mirror the anticipated quality of development and life envisaged the wider Harlow, Gilson Garden town, and absolutely in accordance with Gilbert principles, restoring pride in all corners of the town, of the existing town boundary. So I don't know if that answers the question, but
no, it doesn't, because there's no mention in there of housing. There's no mention in there of the renewal of the housing stock.
Can I also point, Councillor Edwards, to the blue boxes, the very last point, every resident in the town will benefit from a renewed sense of pride in the appearance and function of the town centre, hatches, neighbourhood centres and estates.
The point about housing stock, I think housing is key infrastructure, but we can add the word housing stock.
My other question is, why is this report written in a way as if Harlow was a unitary authority? Harlow is not a unitary authority. You talk about the libraries in here, you talk about various other bits. They're not our responsibility. We're a district council. Why isn't this report concentrating upon what is the district council responsibilities, and then equally spelling out where it is not our responsibility about how we will work in partnership with other agencies, because there's enough confusion in this town as it is about which council has which particular responsibility for what.
Councillor Swords and then Councillor Harlow.
I thought for a moment, Tony, you were endorsing the idea of Harlow becoming a unitary authority, but we can clarify that later on. This document, put simply, the aim of this document is that you can hold, by the time the consultation is completed and the corporate plan is, the town plan is fully endorsed, we will be able to hold this up and say that this is what Harlow will look like, we believe, in 2047, that we will be able to say to any resident in the town, here is a plan for the next 27 or 37, whichever it may be, years, in no uncertain terms. I get you're saying about, you know, what is the responsibility of the district council, county council, etc., I have a fundamental disagreement with you about work, you know, the responsibility of you know, access or whatever it may be. Cycle tracks, I think, are a gleaming example. This council, previously, this council did not do enough, whether it be to hold Essex County Council to account for the work that they did on cycle tracks, and you may say that you moaned a lot. I personally have a different view between moaning and action. But that, you know, that goes across whatever item we're talking about, libraries, whatever it may be. You know, this is the vision, this is what we want to happen. And I passionately believe, you know, when adopted, we will make happen by whatever means necessary. And I think a glowing example of that will be when I announced in due course the plan for the cycle tracks. That's something we would have led on. We would have found means of delivering. Because at the end of the day, you know, Essex County Council, UK government, whatever body you may be talking about, we are Harlow Council. We are sent here by the people of Harlow to do the best thing for Harlow. That doesn't mean to just focus on what we can and can't directly control, and not to influence other bodies. So, in short, this is a document that will be the vision over that time span. And we will work with whoever is necessary to deliver the vision we want, not what they want to implement.
Thank you, Councillor Sauce. Councillor Holder, would you wish to add anything to that?
Yes, the reason why we didn't go into huge detail was, as you said, we didn't want to confuse the residents of Harlow by introducing all the complexities. But yes, it's obvious we are going to be working in partnership with various bodies, as demonstrated by the Harlow and Gilson Garden Town, which is 3 districts and 2 counties, which are working beautifully together to bring forward the Garden Town.
Can I also add that I think it's really important that we recognise this council as a community leader, and in helping to craft this vision and this document, and in asking the public their views on this vision and document. I think we need to recognise that, as Councillor Sauce says, not everything falls under our control. We acknowledge that, Councillor Edwards. Not everything is the responsibility. Indeed, a large proportion of the town centre is actually, as we recognised earlier this night, owned by private landlords, and there's going to need to be some levering of those and bringing those to the party as well. But just because we don't own something, just because we're not responsible for the libraries, for example, doesn't mean we shouldn't have a community leader's view on the libraries, and I think it's important. And secondly, I think half the time tonight we've had questions about why the document hasn't been bigger, why we haven't expanded more, and then we've also got questions around, well, you know, you don't want to confuse the public. So managing a document like this and going out to a proper consultation is always difficult, because you don't want to lead the public too much, but at the same time you want to honestly ask them for their views. We've got a vision that we've started to pull together and present here, given that there was no document like this in the past and there was no overriding strategy. But at the same time, I'm genuinely interested to hear what you as the opposition and what members of the public, and indeed any other body that wants to consult on this, has to say about it. So I hope that answers your question, Councillor.
If I can maybe just come back with what concerns me is that in the past we've had things like 2020 vision. I seem to remember there's been a whole lot of, in different times, there's been a whole lot of strategies for the town, as if they were being presented as if these things are going to happen. The town are deeply cynical at the moment about what can and what can't happen. So if we're going to be laying out visions of what we expect to be happening by 2047, we need to be damn sure that we can achieve it, and not just put up things which look attractive but actually are well and truly outside of our kit.
I think we do have to, Councillor Edwards, and I think when government dictates, of whichever colour, government dictates housing numbers, for example, that must be delivered by a certain period of time, when there are other things laid down in law that have to happen, I think it behoves us as a community leader to ensure that we complement those and we make sure that our plans deliver. But I also think it's important, as it's been said a number of times tonight, that we actually have a plan for the town. And I reiterate, this is the first time a document like this, to draw all of those individual documents and strands together, has ever been presented in the history of the town. Councillor Swords, I think you're indicating that you want to answer Councillor Edwards as well.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. The town is cynical, deeply cynical, and rightly so. No matter what area of policy you look at, it is deeply cynical. I know only too well. I'm not cynic myself, but I understand why. Because for a very, very long time, people in this place make statements and don't deliver upon them. People knock on doors and promise things that they then don't deliver on. But it would be utterly remiss of me to sit here and say we have no ambition because we may not deliver on it. We have no plan because we may not deliver on it. Because I am absolutely, passionately clear that I believe we can deliver on it. The town centre again is a fantastic example because it gets thrown on the too difficult heap and is left. State regeneration, as you mentioned, it gets thrown on the too difficult heap and is left. For too long, those questions have gone unanswered. Now, you may disagree with what was in this text, and I really do hope you contribute fully to the consultation, but no longer can those questions go unanswered. No longer can we have a council that isn't delivering on what people want to see. I think in May, for instance, we put an alternative vision forward and it was endorsed in all corners of the town, perhaps not just the National Parliament High Street, but in many other areas. We've been tasked with the responsibility of delivering it, and we have this beauty in this country called democracy, and if we don't deliver on it, we'll get the boot, and rightly so.
Thank you. Councillor Harvey, you want to come back with a further question?
Can I just ask something, and it is a genuine question?
I would expect nothing else from you.
If we don't own land in the town centre, how do we influence what happens in that space? And I am right that it's about 70% or possibly more that we don't own. So how do we get around that?
Councillor Swords, I think you're eager to cover this question.
Yes. You may be tempting me onto commercially sensitive matters, so I'm not going to delve into too much detail about some of the detail of such things. But I'll take the example of another new town, Bracknell, whose corporation sold off a lot of their town centre as it transitioned to a council. Over the last 10 years, they have delivered absolutely radically transformational regeneration because they went into a very large joint venture partnership, bought all the areas in the town centre they didn't own, whether through compulsory purchase or other such means, and delivered that. In the same fashion, if you've got any comment on that, I'm happy to take questions, but in the same fashion as I just said to Councillor Edwards, if in 5 or whatever time frame years you want to put on it, if we haven't tackled that question that's been thrown on the too difficult heap, because how do we answer it, let's just ignore it, we'll be booted out. So, and again, like you said, we have to do it, not for a political purpose, but to make the town a better place. So, in direct response to your question, there are many tools at the disposal of a council, whether it be compulsory purchase, which Councillor Durkin mentioned earlier, the town centre master plan that's coming forward will give us a bit more beef in that area, and our powers to do such a thing. But a joint venture partnership could just be another alternative.
And I think Councillor Harvey, you want to offer an answer as well.
Just a quick one. Of course, we've talked about the town centre master plan, and of course that allows us to develop policies and guidance for future planning applications, which will be in line with what we want to see.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey. Are there any other questions? In which case, before we enter a debate, can I ask Councillor if you would be kind enough to formally move and second the report?
I formally move.
Second.
Okay, shall we enter the debate? Does anyone, Councillor Durkin, you got there before I even finished, so I'll go to you first.
Thank you, Chair. I've listened with intrigue to what my colleagues have been saying, but let's be honest, you can't even empty bins, let alone have the aspiration of doing anything with our town. Surely your responsibility is to do the important things best, rather than this nonsense amateurish idea that you've actually got. This evening all we've heard is political dogma, all we've heard today is political point scoring. Apparently Harlow is a real crap place, according to the cabinet member, over these 74 years of doing absolutely nothing.
Councillor Durkin, I've had a point of personal clarification raised, which is a point of order, so the standing order, so I must go to it. Councillor Source.
I have in no way ever mentioned or suggested in any small part that this is a quote crap place to live or any such thing. I'll tell you what I have said. I've said that this is one of the most unique towns in the country that I've never visited anywhere else with community spirit, with assets like this town. All I'm simply saying is that we're bringing forward a plan, because you never did, to make this town a better place to live, a better place to raise a family, a better place to start a business. Now you can carp all you like in those moments, but you cannot take away things that I never said.
Thank you, Councillor Source. Councillor Durkin, if I can return to you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. We also said in one of the speeches that we didn't deliver, but I do remember that your manifesto said the first thing that you would be doing when you got elected was to give me a tax rebate. Well, I'm still waiting, and so is the rest of the town. So I think you just need to be careful about people throwing stones in glass houses. It's also very interesting that we've actually heard that actually compulsory purchase is on the agenda for the town centre. So those businesses in the town need to be aware that actually they may well actually welcome that, because we have to pay above rate. Let's just be clear, Andrew. Your cabinet member for regeneration says very little has actually happened. We've just ignored, we've allowed things to rot. Let's look at how we built council houses for the first time in 25 years. Let's look at Councillor Carter, absolutely, quite rightly, talked about building the Hills and Bushy Croft. Council houses being built. Lister House being built for these. Let's look at jobs and opportunities. Me and you shared many meetings about the development of the enterprise zone. We've also dealt with the science park, which is hugely successful. This very building was actually designed and constructed. The water gardens, the Harvest Centre, the town park with lottery funding is now the heart of our town and is aspirational. We have done more about employment and careers, and let's not criticise, because look at the amazing work that Harlow College has achieved over the last few years with the support of secondary and primary education. We're still waiting for the decision, which we already know the decision's being made about Acacia House, but it affords us as a council a real unique opportunity to make the difference. Look at the investment that has been put into public transport with the train station and the bus station. And I know that at the moment with social media there is some concerns about policing in the town, but we all know statistically we're actually a safe town over these particular issues, but we do need more police that are visible, available and local. And the final point is, look how proud we are. We're a sculpture town. We have heritage, we have culture, we have leisure, we have tourism. So this is not a town that's dying and is desperate in need for this. But let's go back to the essence of this debate, that you want to start a consultation, you don't know the cost of it, you don't know who's doing it, you don't know when it's going to be done, you don't know the questions that are going to be asked, you don't know who's going to assimilate the answers. So would this be smart, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic timing? Not at all. This is nothing more than amateur hour, which is trying to hoodwink our town to try to claim that you are doing something, whereas in fact you are doing nothing. Now I know this will go through, and I will welcome and I will be actively participating in the consultation, because as I said at the beginning, as I wind up, it's really important that we activate and encourage and enable our community to take ownership and responsibility. That is our legacy for our town and for the next generation. But this amateur way that you are doing it is simply that, and nothing more. And thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Councillor Durkin. I always do find your contributions entertaining. Are there any other contributions? Councillor Dennis.
I'm rather unclear, Chair, where £250 million to redevelop our town is coming from. Apparently, Bracknell had in 2017 £250 million to redevelop. They're still in the process, as from July perhaps of this year, they're still in the process of trying to demolish some of it. We're in quite a wreck. So if we've been compared to Bracknell, Chair, then there are problems, there's no question of that. But goodness, we're really going down the Bracknell road.
Thank you, Councillor Dennis. I think the time for questions was previously. This is a time for debate. Is there anyone else that would like to? Councillor Vince.
I won't take too long, Chair, don't worry. I know we've been on site for some time. I welcome any aspiration for our town. I want to see this town as good a possible place as it can be, which is why council officers are inundated by emails from me on a regular basis about issues within the wonderfully still red sea of Little Pond and Hare Street. But this proposal is not costed, it's not enforceable, and frankly it's not achievable. And that's my final word on that, other than to welcome Councillor Swords' support of our campaign to bring the Oyster card to Harlow. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Other contributions are you? Councillor Swords.
Fantastic. Just fantastic. Bins, Councillor Durkin. Who signed the contract? Previous Labour administration. Quote, December 2020, Perry Roadside coming forward soon. Quote, December 2020, a tender will be brought forward soon. Public consultation on Perry Roadside, 11th of May 2018, 4 people turned up. I'll take no lectures off the previous administration about consultation. 12th of July 2017, Market Square, quote, a place-to-place fall. Bracknell, Councillor Danvers, 250 million doesn't even cut mustard. I don't know whether you visited the redevelopment of Bracknell. If you haven't, I'd very much welcome you on a trip we made planning there. The footfall has outstripped every target ever set since any redevelopment taken place. You are right. There are still bits being demolished or in the process of being demolished because they did something that the previous Labour Council never did, acted on the town centre. March 2021, quote, town centre, it's about evolution, not revolution. Who said that? Councillor Durkin.
One of my favourite quotes.
So, on one hand, we've got Councillor Danvers saying, you know, they've acted too slow, they haven't completed. On the other hand, we're talking about an evolution. Well, what stage of the evolution did we ever get to with the previous Labour Council in this town centre? Were we out the sea yet? Were we crawling yet? No, we were nowhere near it. Absolutely nowhere near it. We've brought forward a plan that's going forward to consultation. You know, one of the biggest consultations this council will ever have done, because we have aspiration. You know, Councillor Vince talked about aspiration. Yes, we have aspiration. Yes, you know, I hope this, you know, it may not be perfect in the form it is. I accept it is most likely not. And there will be many, many, many things that come forward, but we have a plan. You never have a plan. We're bringing forward so many different strands and bits and pieces, most of which came from Conservative government funding, I hasten to add, Conservative government initiatives, I hasten to add, into one document that we can embark, as I've said many times, a once-in-a-generation programme, neighbourhood renewal, town centre, rebuilding. You know, it will not matter which window you look out of. I passionately believe that we will deliver on those things, and you know, I've welcomed many of the questions. I mean, Councillor Harlow brought forward a fantastic question, passionately, about further things we need to include in this plan. But you know, I really thought that, you know, after those events of May the 6th, that the Labour Party may have realised that perhaps their record in office wasn't great as Councillor Durkin likes to portray. You know, if he wants to go on all night, I have many quotes of things that, you know, because I wanted some inspiration from the great beast, as I once described him, how not to do regeneration. So I have many, many quotes of things he said, many of which contradictory, but all led to the same result, no action. So yes, we're bringing forward a plan.
Yes, we're going out into one of the biggest consultations this council ever has, and when adopted, I have no doubt that we will finally answer many of those pleas that have far too long been forgotten, ignored, thrown on the too difficult heap. And yes, we may not get it all right, but my God, at least we're trying.
Thank you, Councillor Swords. Does anyone else wish to come into the debate? In which case, before I go to Councillor Harlow to sum up, I'll say a few words. I think Harlow is at an unprecedented time in its history, comparable perhaps only to its initial inception. We sit at the crossroads of the UK Innovation Corridor, the M11 with the improved junction, the relocation we hope of Public Health England or UK SHA to the town, a new hospital, massive growth in the Garden Town to the north of the town, one of the biggest residential developments in the country at the moment. An unprecedented level of funding from government, as Councillor Swords points out, into the infrastructure and fabric of our town. And we as a council are currently without a wider plan for how to coordinate all of that growth, all of that potential wonderful regeneration, to give our public a chance to have their say on what they want to see in the town. I welcome the bold nature of a paper that Councillor Swords and Councillor Harlow have laid out, and I don't think it's unreasonable to ask the questions about should the central line be coming out to Harlow. I don't think it's unreasonable to ask should we, host a second university in the town. I don't think it's unreasonable to ask, where our road infrastructure should be, where our rail infrastructure should be, and how we should be wider connected to the region, and what educational organisations we should call to the town, and what businesses may want to relocate to the town, and how we can make the town, as we've said a number of times. I'm sorry, Councillor Dowers, you've had your chance to speak.
It would just be
really
nice
don't
if the
appreciate you
vote
interrupting and talking whilst I'm talking.
This is very
And if you carry on, Councillor Dowers, I will move for your removal from the chamber. You've had your chance to speak. I've given you and your colleagues plenty of time. Plenty of Councillor Dowers, please be quiet.
That's the manners.
Or just look at
Councillor Dowers, please be quiet, or I will move for you from the chamber.
Oh, speaks for itself.
Councillor Dowers, please do not try me. This has been a polite debate so far. We've accepted a great deal of discussion and question from your side, which I welcome, but I don't welcome you being impolite to other speakers, including myself, and you trying to barrack from the sidelines. Apart from anything, I'm sure the media who are watching and the video of this will not appreciate your constant chuntering on the video feed. So please, will you be polite and respect other speakers in this chamber, as we have always respected you. It is appropriate that we do continue. It is appropriate that we do continue to consult properly on this. It's appropriate that we look to the future of Harlow with joy and with aspiration, rather than looking back at some of the mistakes of the past. We should learn from those mistakes, and we need to be forwarding a strategy that makes Harlow the best place to live, as we've said, the best place to work, the best place to raise your family, just the best place to be in the country. Because I really believe, as a Harlow boy, as a Harlow born and bred white, that this is an incredible part of the country. And I think we need a plan going forward, and I welcome the ambition of this plan. Councillor Harlow, you proposed this, so I'm going to give you the last say, the last part of the show. Is there anything you'd like to add?
Thank you, Chair. I think we can all agree, I think we have all agreed that this is a very complex paper to produce. When I sat down with my pen and paper to start structuring it, it was a case of, well, where do I begin? So what we have presented here, and I mean, it does jump around. It is the beginning of the process. I can't see this document being anything like it is now when it is finished after the consultation. And as I said, this will go out for extensive consultation from residents, proactive consultation, which again I haven't seen happen in this town before. We want to get the views of as many residents who want to participate, and we want the views particularly of the younger generations, because obviously this is their future. So I do, again, I'll reiterate that apart from all those, I do encourage you as members to participate in it as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harlow. Can I ask Cabinet to agree with the recommendations in this report? Thank you very much. Item 14, EV charge points contract award. Councillor Gunn, can I go to you, please?
Thank you, thank you. So this is the first of two items I'm bringing to Cabinet tonight, both of which will have a big impact on Harlow's response to climate change, and in this case one that will have a direct beneficial outcome for Harlow residents as we transition to a carbon-free future. I'm pleased to present this contract award decision to Cabinet and recommend the Council enters into a contract with BP Pulse for the supply of EV charge points in 6 council car parks, 2 at the Stowe, 2 at Bush Fair, 1 in Old Harlow and also in our glorious town park. Using grant funding from the Office for Zero Emission Vehicles, match funded by BP Pulse, this will more than double the number of publicly available EV charging points available in Harlow, making it that much more practical for residents to make the transition to non-carbon forms of transport. On World Electrical Vehicle Day, this is a timely opportunity to show our commitment to a greener future. And I want to stress the urgency in getting to work on making Harlow a town that is fit for the future, where all Harlow residents have good locally available options to charge electric cars. Change is happening and fast. Last month, 1 in 6 new cars sold had a plug, with over 500,000 electric cars already on UK roads. Thanks to £2.8 billion being invested by the government to support the switch to EV, 500 new charge points are being installed across the country each month. And with the Road to Net Zero strategy having set a 2030 deadline for ending the sale of purely diesel and petrol cars, we must ensure our residents are not left behind. If approved, this contract will see one of the commitments set out when Harlow Council unanimously declared a climate emergency back in July 2019 fulfilled, and at the earliest possible opportunity under this new administration. In light of cross-party support for pledging to install EV charging points in council car parks where feasible, I look forward to cross-party support for this new administration moving quickly to deliver on commitments made just over 2 years ago. Alongside the recommendation to award this contract, there is a further recommendation to implement a steering group to develop a strategy on installing on-street residential charge points in housing estates and other locations across the town. And I want to ensure that we all understand the importance of this, given the particular challenge that Harlow faces. Nearly half of properties in the town have no access to off-street parking. This is by far the highest level in Essex and well above the national average. So working with Essex County Council and with full public consultation on any proposals that affect parking in residential areas. This is important work we must begin now to ensure that all Harlow residents can move to electric car ownership wherever they live. 2 years on from the declaration of a climate emergency, and with many neighbouring councils having moved faster than us, the urgent need to respond to climate change, and given the lack of public charging sockets in this town, I believe we need to move quickly, and for the benefit of those we represent, move Harlow's response to climate change into the fast lane. Supporting this report will allow us to do that.
Thank you, Councillor Gunn. And I take it you're formally moving that, and I'll come back for a second after we've had questions. Are there any questions? Councillor Durkin,
Yes, Chair, I've got 5 questions, but I think at this particular point I'll look to Joel and to Simon. I have to declare, is it a non-pecuniary interest as being a non-director of HTS, because they are mentioned in the report, and I would want to ask a question about that.
Is that the right word?
I think our legal services manager was nodding, but perhaps I can look to...
Oh, okay. Well, you know what I meant. Okay. Yes, if I may, thank you very much.
Councillor Durkin, I'm being told it's okay, and we've got your declaration.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. Okay. The first of my 5 questions. The first one is in section 10. Is it my understanding that the maximum loss of the change of use of a car park space could result in about £1,703 being lost per annual per year? And what assurances, if that is the case, that you will not be increasing car parking charges to reflect that loss of income? Do you want me to do all of them? Would that be helpful? Yeah, okay. Number 2, in, I think it's section 12, you mentioned 20 pence and 16 pence, and we're going to get 25% of the profit. So is that 20% the actual profit, or is that we have to take off the running costs of the system, and that therefore we get the 25% of whatever's left over? The next one is it my understanding in section 13 that if you wanted to have a full charge, and I think it's given an example of Bush Fair, you would have to leave your car there for 4 hours? And if so, will there be a reduction in the amount that you would be having to pay for parking there normally if in fact you are deciding to plug yourself in? Number 4, why is not post office car park mentioned? And whilst I understand that the Staple Tie car park is owned by another organisation, I'm just wondering why we are not in partnership with them to see if we're going to do this. We might as well do it as comprehensively as we possibly can. And my final one, which is exactly linked to my declaration, is that whilst I note in 23 that you are going to be in conversation with HTS about the future installation, is there any possibility that HTS can be subcontracted to work on the installation of these current ones and then support the maintenance? That's me done.
It's quite a batch there, so feel free to come back if you need to clarify. You get your money's worth from it. I saw him scribbling furiously. I'll go over to Councillor.
I'll do my best to answer those as best I possibly can. So the 1,703 figure is a worst case scenario for one of the car parks. The aspiration and the aim of doing this isn't to raise money particularly, it's to help transition to achieve the 2019 carbon emergency declaration. The hope would be that we would be raising money in due course from these charging points. So I'm not. I think it's helpful to understand the worst case scenario, but it is no one ever uses these things. So I don't think that's entirely what we're focused on. So I just want to clarify your question.
Yeah, no, it was just sure about if this is proposed and if we are losing that amount of money, is it anticipated that your administration will now be increasing the car parking charges, which we have held down for a number of years?
This doesn't have any effect on car parking charges. The 25% profit, that's item number 12, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, the contract's yet to be fully signed off, so I wouldn't be able to speak to exactly how that's calculated. But it would be a profit sharing arrangement. If BP Pulse make money off of this, Harlow Council make money off this.
And just to clarify, the quotes of 20% and 16%, is that the actual running cost or is that the profit? Because 25% of 20p is 5p, whereas actually if the running costs are 19 pence, the profit is very little indeed.
I think I'd probably have to come back to you with a bit more clarification on that. Perhaps if you could pop me an email, I'll see if I can get some details to you, okay? On the third item, that's 4 hours for a full charge, and whether there'll be any reduction on that. I think, again, that's something that would need to wait until the contract's fully signed off to be able to give you an accurate answer. I don't want to give you anything that's in any way speculative. The post office car park, so one of the requirements of the funding, and this is explained in the report, is being close to residential areas accessible from there. And the post office car park failed, as I understand it, to meet that element of the feasibility test for the funding. So that's why that's not on there. But that doesn't mean that it couldn't be a future site to do something else with. But it failed to meet the feasibility study that BP Pulse ran on that basis of the contract, the funding from OZEV.
So just on that one, how does that link then to the town park? Because that doesn't have residential.
It does nearby, yes.
Well, with the development of Wych Elm and other areas and Strawberry Fields around, Strawberry whatever it's called, at the town centre, surely that's the same criteria.
I'm being advised that there's potential for redevelopment of that car park, which may possibly be a consideration. In any case, the feasibility studies didn't pick up on, didn't go with the post office, and I hope that I've covered that with the explanation.
So, for the record, there is planned redevelopment for the post office car park?
That's not what I said, no.
Sorry?
That's not what I said. I understand that's something that may happen in the future, but I'm not in a position to go into that any further, I'm afraid. On stable tie, obviously close to my heart, being in my ward, but there's various other privately owned car parks around Harlow, Water Gardens, for example. I'm sure that we'll see many other private landowners moving to install electric charge points in future, but they haven't yet, and part of what we're hoping to do here, I think, is to try and spur that. So I'd hope that the owners of Stable Tie Car Park, of the Water Gardens, but many others, will look at this and see an opportunity for themselves to help with the transition as well. To come on to the point about HDS, the last time we had Cabinet, you asked me a question about raising this with HDS, and I'm pleased to say that I did. I've spoken with John Phillips about their ambitions in this area and excited by them. And I should say, we're looking at a requirement by 2030 of hundreds, if not thousands, of electric vehicle charging points across the town. So there's a huge opportunity, a huge requirement to do more. And as I think point 23 in the report makes clear, HTS are seen very much as a good option for that, something that we want to explore fully with them. I don't think that they would be in a position to be subcontracted on this contract for the installation and maintenance. However, it's a 4-year contract, it may be extended, and who knows what would happen to these charging points in 4 years' time. It may be that that's something in 4 years' time that makes a lot of sense, but that's not a decision for us here today.
Thank you, Councillor Hill. And I think in a second, Councillor Swords wants to come back to help answer one of Councillor Durkin's questions, but it has reached the hour of 21:30. To continue this Cabinet meeting under our outstanding orders, I need to propose a motion that we continue past the hour of 9:30, and I'm going to propose that we continue to complete this agenda tonight. Could I set a second for that? Thank you, Councillor Charles. Will Cabinet be willing to agree? Thank you. Councillor Swords, can I come to you to help answer that one question that you were indicating there?
Yes, it was the question you raised about post office car park, Tony. Given the debate we've just had, that scale of ambition in what we're doing in the town centre, I'm not going to rule anything out. And we're not looking at our plans in the town centre. We're certainly not going to be confined by what's currently in place. But Councillor Gunn certainly didn't put on record, as you may have suggested, that there are concrete plans. As I said, we're going to rule nothing out, and there perhaps will be something to bring forward very shortly that may excite Councillor Durkin far more than electric charging points.
Thank you, Councillor Swords. And Councillor Charles, you want to come back on the HTS question?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Going before the Shareholder Subcommittee later this month is a scoping document on the future commercial strategy of HDS. As part of that, and of course, as you can imagine, colleagues have been discussing the potential of green technologies. I certainly echo what Councillor Gunn has said about on-street residential charging points as a potential opportunity for HTS to build capacity to deliver in the future. But these types of discussions will be covered not only in the scoping document, but as we look to build out the wider business plan for HTS going forward, as we look to see realise a 5-year pipeline of activity, not just on the BAU that they deliver at the moment, but into these types of market opportunities, and particularly green technology.
Thank you, Councillor Charles. Are there other questions in the room? No. In which case, I need to seek a formal seconder for this. Councillor Swords, thank you. Does anyone wish to debate EV charging points? And I see Councillor Durkin's hand go straight up.
Generally, we welcome the initiative. There's nothing wrong with the initiative, and we want to go forward. I think this evening we've been talking about aspiration and about being bold, and nothing's happened in the last 70 odd years. It seems like it's just a unique opportunity that we could actually be getting businesses, hospitality, public services, ourselves all together, and let's do it together. wherever we've got a public car parking area, whether or not it's the water gardens that apparently the regeneration cabinet member forgot that actually we supported and built, or the Harvey Centre over those particular issues, or even the hospital or the new hospital. Isn't it a really unique opportunity that we should be talking to these guys and actually sort of saying, this is what we're doing, why don't you come on and get it at the same time? So instead of doing it bit by bit, if we're really serious of being about aspirational, Andrew, I hope this would be a unique opportunity for our future. I do take note of what both Joel and Alistair says. I am biased as a non-executive director of the area. I actually think we have the capacity and the capability to support the BP initiative by doing the subcontracting and the maintenance, and I'm pretty sure through our contact with others we'll probably press that debate. So I welcome the initiative, congratulations for bringing it forward to us. It's something that we need to endorse, something we need to be support, but disappointed that all we're doing is exactly what you said that we've been doing for the last 74 years, is all we're doing is looking after our own. You could have had an opportunity, you had an opportunity, you didn't take it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Durkee. Other contributions? Councillor Sauce.
In a slightly different fashion, but same premise, I absolutely welcome the report that's been brought forward. I'm not sure which way in which Councillor Durkee may try and spin this, but it's the first time that Harlow Council is set to install EV charging points. I think some of the detail in the report that's been brought forward is incredible, and when it's read fully, which I'm sure it has been by Councillor Durkee, you will see some of the remarkable detail and benefit it will bring to the council. As I said, it's the first of its kind. So yes, there are many more opportunities across the town, as Councillor Dunn has already said, that the council will be looking to roll out across, whether it's privately owned or not. But in the round, it's a fantastic report being brought forward, showing our commitment to delivering on something that was passed in 2019 and hasn't been acted on thus far.
Thank you, Councillor Sauce. I see Councillor Harvey.
Thank you, Chair. Just very quickly, I think it's terrific, and I think what's great about the electric vehicle charging points is they send a signal not just to those who are using them, but they're saying this is something that this town is making a priority. So I think they're very important for social proof. Totally committed to achieving the carbon reduction that we're going to talk about in a minute, and this is obviously a really important part of that. I just wanted to, I don't know if this is a proposal or suggestions, I don't want to debate or comment, but anyway, I think, there is a real issue in this town, you talked about it, that we have a major problem with parking and residential, and actually getting our residents to have access to electric charging is very, very problematic because they can't get their vehicle close enough to an outlet. And I think that one project which would deal with two huge problems in one fell swoop would be if we were to embark on a mass drop curb program where we could offer a subsidised I know at the moment you can actually do something, I think, where you get a good deal with Essex County Council, that kind of stuff. It's still quite expensive, but I suspect that even if that was made more widely known, that more people would take it up. But actually, I think, a state by state program, a drop curb, because actually we're all seeing so many people just driving up on the curb without there being a drop there, and it's damaging and it's costly to have that broken. So I think this would be a very exciting project that fits very well with the aspirations of the town plan vision that you were talking about earlier.
Thank you, Councillor Harvey, for that. Anyone else? Councillor Harvey.
It's a sort of chicken and egg situation. You won't buy an electric car unless you can charge it somewhere. I replaced my car 2 years ago, and I was looking to be sustainable and get an electric car, but the charging infrastructure was just not there to do it. So I ended up getting a hybrid, so a little bit of a kind of interim step. But I too commend that we are taking this step, a small step in the right direction to demonstrate that we do support electric vehicles and that people should now look at seriously buying them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harlow. There being no one else, before I go back to Councillor Harlow, I'd like to say a few words. I do think this is a really important report, and I welcome it as the first report that Councillor Grant's brought to us. It does seem a long time ago that this council passed the climate emergency declaration, and I seem to remember in the debate saying that, you know, it's great that we're passing this, but it's about the action that we take. And although yes, it is only 6 car parks, and yes, it is a small number, you know, I really take heart from paragraph 19 of the report that talks about Essex County Council recruiting now an electric vehicle strategic lead who's going to work across district around the county to look at the on-street charge point issues. And I think all the districts in the county working together and pulling together in one direction is really going to be very welcome and will help get that message around. I do think it's a shame that it's taken 2 years to get to the point that we're installing the first charging points in the town as this council, but I do welcome the start. I think I remember a quote from Mother Teresa when someone engaged her about the work she was doing with the poor in Calcutta, and they said, but Mother, the work that you're doing is just a drop in the ocean, and she said, oh yes, but the ocean would be less for that drop. And I think, whilst it is only a small start, it is going to be a large undertaking. And I know, in response to Councillor Durkin's comments, that Councillor Gunn will be looking at how we can leverage our community leadership to look at the other organisations around the town, the other car parks around the town, and that once he's got his teeth into delivering the first charging points in the town, there will be many more to come. Councillor Gunn, I'll give you the final word.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Speak to that point, and the point raised by Tony Durkin. Officers have spoken to the Ward Gardens and the Harvey Centre already, so that work is already underway. I thank him for his kind words about the report, and from Councillor Swords as well, and from Councillor Harvey. I would stress that the steering group is a good opportunity to begin to look more widely at the huge challenges we have around parking across Harlow that of course pertain to electric vehicle charging, but all sorts of other issues. Councillor Watson and I sat in on a call about getting buses down roads that have got cars parked on both sides. We can't run a bus route, so even looking at other forms of transport, sustainable transport, there's a huge potential gain there, difficult to achieve, but that's why that group is being set up, and I thank the officers who've been involved so far in that work. And drop curves, of course, can be something that can be looked at as part of that, although Councillor Evans, I'm sure, will pull me up if I don't point out that there is a need to work with Essex County Council, not a unitary authority, so we'll have to work very closely with those numbers. That's a very important point. But I think we have a broad level of support here, which I'm pleased for, and as Councillor says, Johnson says, it's a start, but a long way to go.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. Can I ask Cabinet to approve the recommendations, please? Thank you very much. We move to item 15, the contract award for delivery of the Harlow Community Hub Service. Can I turn to Councillor Charles, please?
Chair, I'm delighted to move the contract award for the delivery of Harlow Community Hub Services, a new pilot project that we're unveiling today. The focus of this report, I think, has been brought into sharp attention today with the news that, very sadly, there have been 4 further deaths at Princess Alexandra Hospital. It highlights to me, and I know councillors in this room, members of the public who are joining us, that we are not out of the woods when it comes to COVID-19. This authority, actually on a cross-party basis, has taken a cautious approach towards coronavirus. And of course, as we look optimistically to the future and a COVID recovery, this new pilot service, I think, is spearheading the new type of support for the most vulnerable in our community. The Council received £90,000 from the government's Contained Outbreak Management Funding stream via Essex County Council. Within the specification document, because we went out to tender with this opportunity, 6 organisations were invited to bid. The focus of the support was on particularly employment, financial matters, issues around loneliness, food security, and also access to vaccines, because of course we cannot lose sight of the vaccination programme and that work, particularly with younger adults in this community. As a result of that tender opportunity and the focus that we wanted to bring around face-to-face support, access to an emergency telephone line if people had challenges, also some outreach work that will be planned with the successful tenderer, I hope that we can move forward into the next 6 months with a service that has potential to reach more of our community. As I've said, the contract is until March 2020, and as part of that process we engaged with those bidders, potential bidders, that would be the opportunity window. There is room for further discussions, because this is a pilot and we want to see a proof of concept here, working with an external provider or providers. I hope that we can make greater inroads into reaching out to our community, which in fairness was achieved through the previous community hub, but we need to reinvent that provision. We need to focus on the challenges that we're going to face going forward as we look towards rebuilding. Chair, I hope that's a helpful introduction, and we welcome questions from the floor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jones. Thank you for that introduction. Are there any questions for Councillor Jones? Councillor Edwards.
Yeah, firstly, can I say that I welcome this initiative. My only question, a couple of questions really. One, this is a pilot, I understand, for 6 months. So my question is, well, what happens after the end of 6 months? Because that need isn't going to go away. We already know that from the work that's been done up to now, council-led work that's been done in terms of the demand, etc. I know that it's £90,000 contract, so what I don't know is whether or not for a year you're talking 180,000 or what it is you can be. So what are the provisions going forward, really? That's my first question.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Can I ask you, thank you to Councillor Jones.
As part of the, I hope the Councillor Edwards has seen the specification document. Good. Within the specification document, you will have seen that there are various quality assurances, but equally some reporting that we have set out that we want the bidder or bidders to adhere to. Because this is a pilot, we want to build an evidence base around what type of services are of most use through this new pilot, and what is the potential going forward as we reach March 2022, to look at further discussions to see the way forward. The way forward will be informed by the evidence. In a number of key cornerstones of my portfolio, I'm not going to brush to judgments until I've seen the evidence, and that's why we built in the reporting requirements that we did in the specification. That's why I can't move any further on explaining what may happen when we get to March 2022. But what I would say, now that we have come to the position that we have a preferred bidder or bidders, they are aware of the funding pipeline. They have sized the requirement exactly to the specification, and I think we'll be very pleased with the bidder or bidders that are leading on this. But let's wait until the evidence bears out where there's the critical need.
Thank you. Councillor Edwards, I think you had a second question.
Yeah, just following up on that, presumably in terms of the evidence that you'll be looking at, you'll also be looking at the evidence that's already been gained during the time that the scheme was administered, or something similar was administered by the council. So, you know, we already have an indication of what the demand has been and the sort of services that people were looking for. So that, and my second question, I suppose, or follow-on question for that, if one's saying in terms of this is a 6 month contract to March, that evidence will need to be collected by within, say, 4 months from now, in order that you can make a decision in terms of rolling forward. You won't have a 6 month period to gather the evidence, you will only have approximately a 4 month period if you had to put in place provision to go to roll forward. Just so everyone's aware of that.
Thank you, Councillor.
Very good questions. The first point, which was supplementary to the first question, what I would say to you, Councillor Edwards, is that we all know since the existing community hub has been operating, March 2020, there's been over 4,500 calls. So there was a body of evidence for us to design the specification for the 90,000 that we were awarded by the government. But we're moving to a different phase. That was in lockdown and the acute challenges that we faced at that point in time. I want to measure the period going forward as we try to rebuild and recover, and if there are any emerging issues that we need to factor in. You would have seen both in the report and the specification document that there will be regular monitoring by this council of the performance of this contract opportunity. It won't just be a stake in the ground for 4 months and then look at it. There will be far more regular scrutiny and monitoring of the performance of this contract because we want to get it right and we want to maximise the opportunity of this great investment by the government to do some good for the most vulnerable people in our community.
Thank you, Councillor Charles. Any further questions? In which case, Councillor Charles, if you'd like to formally move this?
Yeah, Chair, I formally move this contract award for the new Harlow Community Hub.
And I'll be very happy to second that. And putting that on the record, is there anyone that wants to debate this? In which case, before I go to Councillor Charles, I say I very much welcome the report. The COMF funding, COMF funding from government via County Council is very welcome. I think we all know there is a long way to recover from the pandemic, and particularly you and your portfolio of community resilience, to not just rebuild the community, but to make that community resilient to any future problems that it may face. I think we all acknowledge the great work that the council has done, their officers have done over the community hub, and during the vast part of the pandemic and our cross-party meetings, it was a particular pleasure to councillors that the council was providing such wonderful support. Our officers who were doing that were recognised for that rightly so. I think this is moving that service on to the next stage of its life, and I look forward to knowing more of the details once this has been awarded for you, and maybe seeing this in action in its new guise. So welcome the report. Thank you very much, Councillor Charles. I'll let you start.
Thank you, Chair. I welcome the questions to scrutinise the way forward on what is a critical service for the most vulnerable in our communities we look to rebuild. Not to rehearse the discussions that have already been had, but I see this as a key part in the short term in particular as we build out the community resilience portfolio of focusing on those who are vulnerable in our community that need that additional extra support. And thanks to that government funding that's come from Essex County Council, we are able to realise that. And that is important. I very much look forward to engaging with the bidder or bidders. I have to use that language carefully because of course there is a calling off process as part of this tender opportunity. But I am sure once the announcement is made of who is the bidder or bidders of this opportunity, the councillors will not only welcome it, but will want to engage with them about how the body of evidence is being built up. And I invite Councillor Edwards to be part of that monitoring process in the spirit of cross-party work that we have been doing to address the realities of the coronavirus.
Thank you, Councillor Charles. Can I ask cabinet members if that's agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Can we move to item 16, Fire Safety Works, Pennymead Tower, Netswell Tower and Spring Hills Tower. Councillor Carter, I think we're going to you on this.
Thank you, Chair. I think I've already sort of spoken at length on the Fire Safety Works. I'll just draw your attention to paragraph 2, describing actual working volume. That actually word like compartmentation between the floors. This is to break up long tubes of air moving up and down the building, and ventilation ducts, but also to replace the main doors and also the internal fire doors where the building rates have been upgraded. It's just over £1 million, and I sort of want to move the item.
Thank you. Since you've moved it now, I'll formally second it. But can I ask if there are any questions in the room first of all? Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you very much, Chair. I have two questions in the debate. I always have some comments to make. My question, which is very much linked, my two questions that are very much linked to this important agenda item, is covering the building and safety white paper. Just for some people who are not aware, after the tragic events of Grenfell, the government commissioned several bodies, including consultation on a really important document, the building and safety white paper, which was going to cover important legislation on fire safety in tower blocks. Indeed, when I chaired a housing standards board last year, the national consultation on this was discussed and debated by the Harlow Standards Board, Housing Standards Board. There was national consultation going off, obviously, in all local authorities on this important issue. I was absolutely gobsmacked that when the Queen's speech, it disappeared. And I find that really frustrating. So my questions are to Councillor Carter, does he know when we can expect any more information on this really important piece of legislation? And secondly, does Councillor Carter share my frustration on why such an important paper has disappeared?
Thank you. As far as I'm aware, it's still out for consultation. I think I've wanted to say that. Yeah, very much, Dave.
I think that we've been made aware the consultation period is over, but they haven't set the government a timetable to implement the proposals in the white paper. But I understand that they have been agreed that they are determined to do that and to look to legislate as soon as practical.
And if I can add to Councillor Robinson, the bill was actually published in draft form in July 2020, went through pre-legislative scrutiny by the Select Committee, the HCLG, and the final version of the bill as it is at the moment was published on the 5th of July, just before the summer recess. And there's a response online as well from the Select Committee report if you want to read that. Councillor Wilkinson, you had two questions.
No, there were two questions there.
That was your two questions.
My belief is the same as the head of housing, and that the consultation period has finished, and it was expected to be in the Queen's speech. It was not in the Queen's speech, and that's a fact. I was quite surprised. I'm not trying to make too many political points on fire safety, but I just believe that a really important piece of legislation on that seems to have disappeared somewhere.
I don't believe it has disappeared, but I'm sure Councillor Carter will look into your question for you and come back to you. Perhaps I'll have a chat with our MP.
Thank you, Chair.
Are there any other questions? Councillor Carter, we've formally moved and seconded, so I'll go into debate. Is anyone wishing to debate? Councillor Wilkinson, you want to come straight back?
I do indeed, thank you. I've got a lot to say, and I think first of all, I suppose I'd like to thank Councillor Carter for spending the money that I left him on this issue. I do certainly agree with the comments that were made, I think, earlier by yourself, Chair, that fire safety is something that across this chamber we should be really making a great political debate around. But I think it would be remiss of me not to remind everyone in this chamber, everyone in this town, that the last administration under myself and Councillor Danvers earmarked £several million to put aside for fire safety in tower blocks, and it's lovely to see. And although I'm obviously not portfolio for housing anymore, unfortunately, I still very much welcome, and so does the opposition, very much welcome any initiative for fire safety in our tower blocks. And I will repeat, I think, a couple of sentences that were said earlier. This is not about scaremongering. Our tower blocks are actually safe now. We are at the forefront, and we was highlighted at the forefront. I believe the one show actually highlighted Harlow Council as a beacon authority a couple of years ago that shares all our safety advice on our website for all residents to see. Not many authorities do that, and we were doing that years before Grenfell, and I think it's a really good practice that we're proud of our safety record and tower blocks. So I very much welcome the first stage of spending this money that we've reserved on fire safety, and I'd like to see that the residents of this town, leaseholders, tenants, everyone, obviously can feel safe that we are still pushing this agenda, even though we still think our town makes us safe to start with. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson, for your intervention. Indeed, you're correct. It was the one show, and I remember the debate we had at the time saying how proud we all were that Harlow Council had been leading the way across a number of different colours of administrations. And indeed, on this matter, fire safety there has always been a cross-party consensus on the need to spend this money on our tower blocks. But also, as you rightly say, and indeed also what I said earlier, the fact that our tower blocks are safe. Is there anyone else that wants to enter into the debate? In which case, Councillor Carter, I'll allow you to sum up.
Thank you, Chair. In view of the lateness of the hour, I won't add anything to what I said earlier or what you said just now about fire safety. I had mentioned the funds being identified earlier for this work. It is good now that we've actually got something to work on to start improving it. And it is frustrating waiting for these regulations to come down. But frustration will last quite a bit longer waiting the final outcome of the Griffin Tower inquiry.
Thank you, Councillor Carter. Can I ask Cabinet to approve the recommendations on the fire safety works, please?
Agree.
Thank you very much. Move to item 17, communications for committees, working groups, parties and panels. We come first to the referral from the Scrutiny Committee for Housing and Accommodation Requirements for Adults with a Moderate Severe Learning Disability. These references have to be introduced at this meeting by a Cabinet member. I've asked the Chief Executive earlier that in future, if a referral comes from the Scrutiny Committee or from the Cabinet Policy Development Working Group, that the relevant Chair and Vice Chair are automatically invited to the meeting in future so that they can contribute to that debate. But I'm pleased to see Councillor Edwards here anyway. I'll go to Councillor Carter first, and then Councillor Edwards, I'll actually go to you to offer any further comments if that's okay with you before I open the floor to questions, acknowledging this is a report that's come from your committee. So Councillor Carter, can I hand to you first?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm very pleased to be able to bring Councillor Edwards' report. I was part of the working party which produced it, but also I'm grateful to the Council for shining the bright light of scrutiny on this fairly small corner of housing activity in the town, but in the purpose of bringing more dignity to those who are less able and more vulnerable. Well, I'll hand over
to Councillor Edwards.
First of all, can I just sort of say, I'll keep my comments brief because I recognise the time. On the other hand, I wouldn't want the brevity of my comments to be assumed that to lessen the importance actually of this particular report. First of all, I'd just like to thank Councillor Simon Carter and Councillor Bob Davis for the work that we were involved in this particular work. Simon just said that there was a relatively small number. Just so people are aware, there's roughly about 1,600 people with learning disabilities in the town, of whom around about 1,300